all of my commitments, big and small, now, near, far, getting them out in front of me, and so that I can orchestrate it. That's what moved me from latest and loudest, where I was always just in this urgent mode, and that's what was making me not be a great listener.
Welcome to Encouraging Leaders, a podcast that exists to remind CEOs and aspiring CEOs that you are not alone and you don't have to lead that way. I'm Mark DeBron, and today I'm joined by a dear friend, an incredible leader, Bob Hendriksen. He is the Director of Operations for Steelcase, one of the world's leading manufacturers, and right here based in the US, has been there for 35 years, played roles at every leadership level. And what I love about his leadership is how he does it. The specific steps on how he builds culture and gets teams engaged and how he gets the best out of every single person that he leads. I've gotten to witness that. I've gotten to see it. He shared so many things over the last 10 years as we've gotten to know each other. And I look forward for you to get to know him today. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Glad to be here.
It's so fun. I'm like, how do I get to just like set time with friends and then talk and share leadership lessons and life lessons together? So good to have you here. I do ask one question just to start us off and kick us off. The CEOs that we are talking to, I want them to know that they don't have to lead alone. I needed to know that I could ask for help. If you look back on your journey on leadership, when did you learn that lesson that you didn't have to do this whole thing alone? You could actually ask for help and get it.
Yeah, I think I'm relearning that lesson all the time. But for me, it would be, I got into supervision pretty early before I could drink. So I was a young assistant foreman back when we used that term in one of our plants that made file cabinets, like this file cabinet here, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And when your level of complexity is fairly narrow and your span of control is fairly narrow, you can kind of do it all. And as my responsibilities grew and started a young family, I learned very quickly that I couldn't lead alone, but I had to engage others, trust them, build trust. What I found is that people really want to be challenged. So I think often as leaders, we are like, wow, don't bother them. They're busy. I'll just handle it myself. And then you do that over and over and over. And then you're completely overwhelmed, not keeping your commitments. And you've got people going, man, I wish Bob would give me something challenging. So you have a disproportionate sort of capacity there. And so it was a lesson I just had to learn kind of the hard way, but it's been a key lesson over the years of doing this at all different scale.
And so what I hear there is the learning that they wanted you to give them some of the opportunities to grow, wanted to give them some of the responsibilities that you had, and you felt like you had to hold them because you didn't want to bother them.
Yeah.
And learning that it was better for them and better for you to do it that way. If you think back then, was there any leader that stands out in your mind or inside or outside the organization that's been able to help guide that, help speak into you from the other sides? And those were team members of yours that you were delegating to or empowering. Anybody on the other side helping you?
So many have helped me along my career. So my first lean sensei, a guy named John Duba, who is still my sensei, even though he retired from Steelcase 15 years ago. He's in his 70s, and I told him, you can retire from Steelcase, but not as my mentor, my lean guy. So yeah, John was, when we first got into lean, our head of U.S. operations. My last job, a guy named Mark Baker, got us into lean in the late 90s, early 2000s. Steelcase had gone through some pretty significant events where we lost about half of our top line revenue because of the dot-com bubble burst, 9/11, Enron, WorldCom, kind of all these things converge, and the bottom just dropped out. Not just for Steelcase. We're the biggest in the industry, have been since the 90s. But our competitors as well, many of which are here in West Michigan, we lost a ton of our revenue and we started choking on our fixed costs. So a guy stepped into the role leading U.S. operations and later all global operations as our COO. And he got us into lean. And he wasn't a manufacturing guy. He had been a McKinsey guy, consultant, a really, really smart guy, quick study, but he didn't know manufacturing. So he's also one of the most humble leaders you'll find. So he said, well, I need a sensei. So he got an internal guy named John Duba. And it happened to be that the lean team, the corporate lean team's space was in the front office of the plant that I was a young supervisor in. So where do you think, out of convenience, where do you think they would go on his weekly Gemba? My area.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mark was learning at an exponential rate from John. So it didn't take me very long before I marched up front and said, guess what? You have another student, me. Your job is to get me out ahead of that guy. So John just patiently would come and walk with me virtually every day. And it was very interesting, his method, because it was teach Bob to see and then teach Bob to do based on what he sees. And he did it in a very nurturing way, I would say. We would stand next to the line and he would say, Grasshopper, what do you see? And I would throw out this, that, and the other thing. And he would say, keep watching, just slow down. And he just had a remarkable way of taking the things that are complex and making them simple enough that you could see the patterns and understand it at a different level. And then, okay, what are you going to do about it? Next day, come back. So he really poured into me, and I'm grateful to this day to what he gave me. Probably the most influential at that point in my career, having that sensei, and I kept him kind of on retainer through my whole career. Like I said,
what a beautiful story. I mean, I hear a few things there. One is, as an adult, as a kid, we get assigned coaches. Like we're on a sports team and somebody has assigned the coach and we're like, okay, I hope we get a good coach. And when you're an adult, which is what I was hearing there, is you actually are responsible for selecting, asking, and then listening to the coaches in your life. And so you went up to him as a courageous move to say, hey, listen, would you be willing to spend time with me? Because I need higher level skills to stay ahead of the demand. And would you please help me grow? And so it's really cool. If you're listening and you don't have somebody in your life like that, it's your responsibility. If you've turned 20, 22, 23 years old or more, which most of you have, it's your responsibility to go out and find your own coaches. It's not somebody else's. So I love that one. The second one is that the sensei, you call it sensei. I love that word. I call it coach, mentor, whatever word you want to use. He wasn't going to give you all the answers. He was going to teach you in a patient way to allow you to find and seek and learn and grow. And what a beautiful story there of just saying, hey, what do you see? And keep watching. You haven't seen it all yet. Why is it so hard for leaders to learn to see?
I think, especially in today's world where things are coming at us so fast paced, that we've almost lost the art of slowing down and just looking and listening, direct observation. We think that all the answers are in email or through AI or, watching the latest YouTube, help video, whatever. And we undervalue going to the Gemba and talking to those that really do the work, wherever that is, shop floor, sales office, whatever, and just slowing down and listening, observing, and thinking.
You mentioned listening in the same words as seeing, and I think it's really a powerful connection. The speed with which we have to pace ourselves to be able to really see or to really listen at a level that can transform, that can move, that can develop. I just got goosebumps because it's been such a profound learning to be able to slow down. You mentioned efficiency or like maybe they're longing for speed so fast, like speed is the thing that they're needing or they want to get it accomplished quickly and so I used to say as a young leader, I said, I've heard as a virtue, it's just not one that I have. It's not one that I was born with. I don't know if you gifted it to maybe some people had it. I didn't have it. And so somebody sitting with you and talking with you and letting you develop that patience to be able to see close enough to be able to witness and learn, powerful lesson. Talk to me about listening. How did that play a role and where did that one come in? Because you had brought that word in. I love the word. Tell me about that one relative to observing or leading or seeing.
Yeah, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, but we often don't get the ratio right. I'm blessed to have a spouse that is the best listener of anyone I know. My wife just is masterful at listening. So I'm with someone regularly that models the behavior. And so it's a constant lesson for me to, stop and listen. Not just for content, but because I think people's greatest need is to be heard and understood. And we can tell if someone is really listening and being present, or if they're just waiting to interject their opinion, their point of view, their position on whatever it is. So you can see the wheels kind of start turning instead of just taking it in. So one thing that I got into in the early 2000s is this book, Getting Things Done by David
Yeah.
Allen, and the
Yeah. Talked
methodology is
about that.
called GTD. So a friend of mine gave me the book and said, he's like, this book will change your life. And I read it or listened. I think I listened to it on audio cassette. And I was like, this is common sense. And it took me a long time to really understand the full power. And to this day, it's the most useful skill set I've ever come across, hands down, in life. But I totally didn't get it the first time through. It took me like 10 years, rereading it like 10 years later. But the concept is, you don't keep any of your commitments. It's a commitment management system. People think it's a time management system. You can't manage time. Time is just running along, but you can manage your action choices based on your commitments. So I made a commitment to you that I was going to do this discussion, and I'm honoring that commitment by us. But people make, hundreds of commitments that they try and track up here. And that's what was happening to me. Was I was on the verge of a fuse, and I wasn't present because I was, I had this subliminal, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. The operator that asked me for something, I got to pick the kids up after work from their volleyball tournament. And so learning GTD and learning to keep everything, to externalize all those commitments, get them out in front of me so I can make strategic choices on the things that I'm going to do, and things, more importantly, the things I'm not going to do, what I need to say no to, so I can focus on, it's like the Pareto principle, right? So I can focus on the 20% that'll have the 80% greatest impact on where I'm trying to go. It's super powerful.
So I just think about how you got there from the listening conversation, and I think about when I've got all those commitments running in my head, I'm thinking about all those things that I haven't done or have promised to do and I need to do and I need to think about. And you're talking to me, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying because I'm trying to manage all of these commitments, and my brain is filled to capacity or over. I'm still a good human. I want to be a good human and meet my commitments, but I can't because I've got them all jumbled in my head. And one of the things that I'd like to do is just be present and listen to you, but I really don't have time because my commitments are all over my head. Is that where it comes into play for you?
100%. What I discovered is that as a lean thinker, we talk about trying to manage to the root cause and solve for root cause and not symptoms. So I always wondered, why do I have this stress? What is the root of the stress? Well, too much to do, not enough time. And I got thinking about it. It's like, I got the same amount of time as Mark has, and I've got an infinite number of things I could do, should do, might want to do. So that's not it. That's a symptom. Root cause, root cause. And I think the root cause is mismanaging. I was mismanaging my commitments by trying to manage them in my head and on sticky notes and in my notebook and all this. And once I got it all out and built both the system, but mostly really the habits and the kind of the rituals around it with a weekly review and setting up the right tools and things like that, even though it's not really about the tools, it's the thinking process and just getting it all out, all of my commitments, big and small, now, near, far, getting them out in front of me, and so that I can orchestrate it. That's what moved me from latest and loudest, where I was always just in this urgent mode, and that's what was making me not be a great listener. I was always like, let's go, let's go, let's go. I wanted to move on to the next thing,
Yeah.
and it
There's
moved
so
me
many
into
of
a
our
much more
listeners.
proactive state. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you've got too many things on your plate, you're normal, and it's normal to have too many things, and so if you don't have a good system or good habits that can get those into places where they're taken care of, and you can meet your commitments and also be able to be present to listen, getting things done, check out some of that work. I love that. I love that you have used that system to be a better and stronger leader and a stronger listener. And it's not about the tool. It's about, I want to be a better leader. I want to live up to my commitments. I think just a little bit, I'm still a little boy inside sometimes. And I remember my little boy, I was like, can't they just understand that I've got a bunch of things that I have to do? And so if I miss the commitments, can't they just get over it? Tell me about the power, because that shifted for me. I started to learn how damaging it was to my leadership and to our team when I would miss a single commitment and not call it. Tell me about the power in leadership and importance of meeting or exceeding your commitments.
It's huge. I came to work at Steelcase right out of high school, didn't go to college, and I've taken classes along the way, but pretty much self-taught. Much of why, they ended up entrusting me with running plants and running the region with 2,500 employees really came down to me making and keeping commitments. If I had to boil it down to a couple things, it would be surrounding myself with the right people and getting them in the right seats. And then the other would be making and keeping commitments. And what I did is I just kept making and keeping bigger and bigger commitments. And then they would entrust me with more scope and more span of responsibility. And I mean, that's like the essence of leadership, taking yourself, first of all, continuous improvement of yourself, making commitments to yourself that you're going to grow in this way, or, as a better husband, as a better father, better community leader, as well as the different roles that you play in your job, whether it's a CEO or whatever. Making and keeping commitments is huge. And if you look at leadership, is all built on a foundation of trust. And trust is based on integrity, obviously being honest with those around you, but a lot of it is follow through on what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, I think it boils down to this simple premise. And, I really didn't know how much impact it had. It was only about 20 years ago when I first learned that I would be late for a meeting by 2 to 3 minutes. And I would say, I had another meeting, I would be like making an excuse. And they would all look at me because I was the leader and say, okay. And I went back through and I started getting feedback, and I just said, what do I need to change about my leadership? Like, I'm thinking they're going to tell me to go, conquer the world or move mountains or, do all these things. And they said, why don't you just get to the meetings on time? And I'm like, really? They said, yeah, you have to get to the meetings on time. You have to be on time. It shows complete disrespect. And from that day forward, 5 years ago, I started this new business, and my number one goal was to be on time and prepared for every meeting because of that impact and that learning of the loss of trust that comes from whenever you've got a lack of commitment reliability. So I love that story. So many leaders don't have that lesson, and I'm so glad that you shared it with them, the power of meeting and delivering over and over and over on our commitments. And that's how we get stronger and stronger leadership given to us. So it's so cool. If you think back over the last 35 years, you've got so many experiences. I know that you have been in the lean continuous improvement world, and I have as well, the operational excellence world, where you get to see and witness excellence across the world. Tell me, if you were going to build a culture, where should they start?
Yeah, so I think people will engage when they know that you care and that you're a provider for them. And I think when people have had things that bug them for a long time that have gone unresolved, they feel unheard and not valued. So if you can start small, when I took over one of our factories, file cabinet factory 10 years ago, I remember coming in, from the parking lot and stopping a fork truck driver. And I introduced myself. His name was Jim. We got to know each other a little bit. And I said, what's one thing I can do for you? What's just one thing I can help you with? And I kind of wanted to be the hero, right? And he reaches up above his cage and he pulls down this clipboard and he says, you see all these tick marks? I said, yeah. He says, that's every time I get kicked off the Wi-Fi. And I have to go through several screens to get back to where I was. Very frustrating. I lose all this time. Fix that. And I thought, I'm going to go fix that. And it turned out it was a whole network redesign thing and all of this. And every time I would see Jim, he would say, want to see my sheet? Because I've been recording this, but nothing's happening. happening. So it took a lot of perseverance on my part just to follow through on that one and mobilize the right resources and make sure they had the right priority, because it was hurting our whole team trying to move goods through the plant to make 8,000 pieces of furniture a day. And when you got all your fork truck drivers that keep getting the spinning wheel of death for minutes on end, well, I think just my point is, help people fix what bugs them, whether it's something you have to take on or put them in a position to fix what bugs them, as Paul Akers would say.
Yeah.
I think that will start to engage people and build trust. You also need to train and educate them. So I think training is a huge piece. In our world, we train them about the 8 wastes, but there's so many things that are transferable outside of work that we can pour into them that can help them in their family. Here at Steelcase, we have quite a strong well-being program where we have people on staff, get, personal trainers, and that's something that we provide for folks. I think those are all ways where people will engage, because I read the same stuff that you do that shows only 20% of the workforce is truly engaged. But I think there's ways to improve that dramatically, and it all starts by building trust.
Yeah. Well, I go back to what I hear there and with Jim is just you were willing to listen. You asked and you listened, and you wish it was an easier one to fix on that one. But you realize that the things that impact them impact everybody. And if he was willing to take the time to post it down and say, hey, this is the stuff right here that bothers me, and you were willing to listen and say, I'm going to try to figure out if I can fix that for you. Powerful. You mentioned the empowerment. You mentioned fix what bugs you, getting other people being able to do things that are improving their own ways to do things. You and I have played in that world a lot. Tell me, what's been the key for you on unlocking their abilities to do their own improvements, their own abilities to change things and adjust and make improvements to their processes?
Yeah, so it starts by educating them, showing them, not telling them, but showing them with real examples, because a lot of people are doing things that are busy. They're busy with non-value added things. So teaching them about value add versus non-value add, teaching them about the waste, such that over time they start to see it themselves. So that's the first key. The second key is to give them the time and resources to make their own improvements. So a lot of times we are not putting people in a position to make their own improvements. So I think that's very important. And a lot of times it's because we feel like, the line's got to be running and we got to keep going instead of stopping and making those improvements. So those are a couple key enablers.
Yeah.
Not easy.
No.
Pretty simple, but not easy.
Right. I think the deep care that it shows whenever you're listening to Jim, and that you can show him that you care by giving attention and sharing that it matters to you, and then allowing them to see that. For me, whenever I'm working with CEOs, if they'll listen for the feedback, sometimes it's as easy as the feedback I received, which is just get to the meetings on time. That wasn't a simple thing for me to be able to do. I needed help and support, and I needed to be able to block schedules. I end up with a half an hour scheduled between off-premise things, and it's on my calendar. And so my team helps me get it there, because by myself, I can't figure out how to get all the places I need to be. But it all comes down to, the first is, I've listened. They've said, you need to change this about your leadership. And I've been willing to do whatever it takes to get that accomplished, because they matter to me and their input is important. And whether I think it's a big deal to get there 2 minutes late, or whether they think it's important, if they think it's important as a leader to listen. So I just think that's the coolest theme that I hear right there, is just start by listening and doing some things that they're telling you to do, so that you understand that it's important that you listen and care about them. If you go back 35 years, you step into the first leadership role, or whenever you get a bigger scope, I'm just thinking about your younger self. Now you're sitting here with the wisdom and education that you have now, all the experiences you've got. You go back and you're sitting there telling yourself one thing you would love for you to know. You want to give one lesson to them, younger self of you, because there's a lot of young leaders listening here. what would you go back and tell yourself?
It's all about the people, and that's, kind of cliche, but it really is all about the people side of it. You can teach the industrial engineering side of these jobs if you're in manufacturing. You can teach the sales side, the service side, any aspects of the business you can learn at business school, or you can teach in the Gemba. But what really can transform an organization's the people side of it. And what I mean by that is, how do you bring people together? How do you mobilize people, get everyone truly rowing in the same direction towards a meaningful goal or goals? How do people know if they're winning or losing? How do you enable them, inspire them to go far beyond what they would otherwise go, just with not wanting to get in trouble, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's the key to the whole thing, is
It's all about the
being
people.
being a provider. It's
You've heard
all
it,
about the people.
heard it before. If you haven't, you hear it now. If you don't know that it's all about the people, keep listening, keep learning, keep growing, because I needed to know that. And the way that I learned that was over and over failure, getting it wrong, and going, oh, wait, it's really all about the people. And so today I know that from experience. I'm so glad to know you and to know that you know that deeply now. And then you can talk about stories about how we actually go out and learn that together and lead together. So if you are listening, thank you for the time, all everything you do to grow yourself as a leader and pour into your people and grow them culturally. Bob, thank you so much for spending time with our group and for who you are and the way you lead. Really appreciate it.